Hello, my name is Captain Stephen Hornish. Today we'll be discussing FF 1001 in the context of the December 25 syllabus for FUPT. Cool objectives will be going over the formation standards, profile, and the formation techniques. For formation standards, those are found in Chapter 8 of the Columbus T6 Standards. It's 10 pages, and Attachment 3, example formation communications, also found in the T6 Standards, and it's 2 pages. Please memorize those. For profile, formation is relatively easy in terms of mission planning. There's very little that has to happen, and it's very repetitive. You're basically limited to 2 options, Bengal or Buzzsaw. Early students in this block will need to accomplish Wingwork 1, ET1, and Closed Trail, but after those are up to MIF. They'll no longer be done. For the check ride, it'll be Wingwork 3 and ET3, and then Closed Trail, I do not believe is on any of the profiles as of right now. Another required item is formation approaches. These can be accomplished at GTR or via a straight-in back here at Columbus. If feeling bold, feel free to attempt the racetrack lead swap straight-in at Columbus if both 1 and 2 need a formation approach. How that would work is one aircraft would lead the approach into GTR. You do the formation go around, and then on the recovery racetrack, you'd do the lead swap, and the other aircraft would then lead formation in for a straight-in back here at Columbus. If you do attempt that, I recommend chair flying it a lot. Think about how you're going to do the comms, what positions you're going to send them to on the recovery. And it happens very quickly. Every sortie, I recommend that you accomplish at a minimum the check ride required items. And in addition, the dagger standard is 3 patterns after every form ride. 70% of all form check ride hooks are for pattern related incidents. If you get scheduled for an out and back, recommend a GTR or a Tupelo profile. The most challenging part about an out and back is the comm plan. So come up with a comm plan. Chair fly exactly how you are going to get from the MOA to the chalks of that out base. You can come up with a plan of, say, comm plan A will include this frequency over this frequency. That way you can just say push comm plan A, and everyone in the formation knows what to do. And if you're ever doing a double frequency swap, meaning we're switching the aux and who we're talking to for ATC, that becomes a big crunch point and things can get lost there. So come up with a plan of how you would communicate if you get on the wrong frequency. In addition, how will taxiing go? Will it be a normal overhead? Are you planning a formation drop-off? What's the taxi plan? All important things that need to be covered. And remember, when you're off base, if you come up for the normal overhead, they will clear the formation to land. So, number 1 will clear the entire formation to land. And so make sure we're responding with flight clear to land. And if there's any doubt or confusion exists, please confirm with the tower controller. For planning techniques, find your formation partner the day prior to discuss what each person needs to accomplish. You'll be flying with different people throughout training, so you might be paired with someone at the very end of the formation training, which they require very little, versus someone in the very beginning, which needs multiple SSRs, Wingwork 1, CT. So find your formation partner the day prior, come up with a good plan before you show up to brief. Determine who has the hammer in ET. This one, I think, gets lost a lot in briefs. If you need multiple rounds of ET, make sure you let the other person know. And usually I brief that 2 has the hammer in ET for most cases, unless I know that as lead I'm struggling with leading ET and I need to practice that more. And then produce meaningful contingencies and know how to fly them. So, for example, tell me what's going to happen if we get breakpoint straight through. Tell me what happens if the weather falls or crosswinds go out of limits, right? I expect you to know how to fly an instrument trail departure, or at least maybe not fly it perfectly, but tell me what pubs I need to read, right? I need to know the Texedra in the 11248. I need to know the 13204, what I expect Columbus to have me do. And I need to know my limitations from like the 112T6 Vol 3 GM. So all things that have to be reviewed. And when it is a non-standard day, such as when it's instrument trail, go ahead and review that. Bring it into the brief, even though as a contingency plan, and brief it in full so everyone's on the same page. In addition, come prepared having the EPOD and ITOD and be able to explain them. So I expect you all to be able to give a thorough brief on what these items are. If there's any questions, find an IP prior to your brief and maybe ask some clarifying questions. What does this mean when I read it? Or I don't quite understand what the position of root is. Like I know it's these parameters from the 11248, but it's not quite clicking, something like that. But come prepared with being able to explain those items. Cool. Some techniques for departure. A lot of times I see students struggle with kind of the spacing or the wasting time in the MOA, right? We can accomplish a lot on the way out to the MOA, right? If given a back area, that gives us a lot of time to accomplish training. Especially if you're given like a low transition, right? You're at 7,000, you could be flying for 5 minutes just straight and level, right? So we could accomplish breakouts, practice lost wingmans, we could do take spacing. Take spacing is one that's not really talked about. It is in the 11248. There's a little section on it. How it works is Lee will tell 2 take spacing. 2 will then go build spacing, however you want. The technique I use is idle for 8 seconds, and then I'll usually call in, or lead will just give the straight ahead rejoin signal. This is another one. If you plan on doing a take spacing, maybe bring it up in the brief because there is not really standard comms for how it's executed. So that's one that you could talk about in the brief as well. Cross unders, yep, you can get those accomplished also, but you'll probably be doing them as well in the MOA. And then additionally, right, use good judgment when deciding low transition. So no longer are we in trans where we can fly through IMC, no problem. We have another aircraft to consider. The clouds here at Columbus are very thick, and you will probably go lost wingman at some point in your time in training here. So that's to be said. You can help mitigate that by limiting your time in the clouds. If you know that there's a cloud layer, maybe ask for the full transition, or don't request a low transition. Or if the clouds are higher, right, if you see them at 10,000, then maybe we want a low transition to get out to the MOA and limit our time transiting through the clouds. Some specific techniques in the MOA itself. So post-ET acronym is torn. I see a lot of students struggle after ET with what to do. First of all, as lead, continue maneuvering, right? But we're just limiting our maneuvers in the vertical as we kind of oscillate down to like a normal wing or a normal parallel plane of motion with the ground. So not wings level, right? Because we want to be in a 30-degree bank turn, but we want to be in a level 30-degree bank turn eventually. But don't just snap to a 30-degree bank turn. I also recommend that terminating on the way up. That way we don't get into a nasty dive as our brain's trying to figure out the terminate drill. So I recommend always terminating on the way up. Some acronyms you can use to help you out is terminate, ops check, reform next. So as lead, we're going to run the terminate drill. I'm then going to do an ops check. I'm then going to reform the formation, and then we're going to think about what we're doing next. And then right from the standards, 30-degree bank turn, don't immediately stop maneuvering. Give 2 something to work with, right? So a big wingman consideration is we always want to give 2 angles to work with. It becomes very difficult as 2 when the lead aircraft is just straight and level and all you have is power to work with. Power takes very slow to get forward line of sight. Aft line of sight. Another thing is you need less mower than you think. A lot of formation occurs in the vertical and less so in the lateral. A leaf of wing work, for example, takes less lateral distance than an echelon turn. If running into a border as lead, you have echelon turn, right? If you see a border coming up, cool, you can do an echelon turn, get away. And even that accomplishes the training of getting an echelon turn. If you haven't done one already, you don't have to be in the middle of the MOA. In fact, I grade more highly if I see you use these tools for your MOA manipulation. Pitch out. So if you're coming up on a border and it needs to happen a little bit faster and more aggressively than echelon, you got the pitch out. Make sure that they acknowledge it before you go. And then you also have the comm. You can direct the pitch out with comms as well. For fighting wing, that's kind of my last ditch, like get out of jail free card. So tell 2 to go fighting wing and then maneuver away from them. That's for if I'm very close to the border and I need to 4G turn away, pretty much. And it has to happen very quickly. And then finally, most MOA busts are for going out the bottom or top during ET. That's what I've observed in formation. Sometimes it happens during wing work, but very rarely do I see lateral MOA bust in formation. Cool, some additional techniques. As lead, use the time during a rejoin to position the formation better vertically in the MOA. So when we have, especially in the high MOA, it's constantly energy losing. I want to get to a neutral energy state, and because every maneuver I do will be energy losing, I need to make that time up. What I try to avoid most in formation is droning. I don't want to just have number 2 on my wing, not doing anything, and being like, oh, we got to climb for altitude. I'm not saying that will never happen. I just try to mitigate it. So, for example, during a turning rejoin or a straight ahead rejoin, I can set as lead 1,000 to 500 to 1,000 VVI to climb or descent to position myself best in the MOA. Kind of in the low MOA, my neutral energy state that I'm looking for is to be around 10,500 to 11,000 in the low MOA. That's a great position to start wing work or ET. And then the high MOA, 19,000 to 19,500 is what I'm looking for. Another thing that we can do to help expedite as you get more proficient in wing work is you can do cross unders during wing work to expedite the profile. So how it would work is you're doing your leaves of wing work. When I see they are on the outside of the turn, I kind of limit my bank to not a full 35 or my pitch to not a full 35, but I do about 10-ish. And then I'll give the cross under signal and I'll keep maneuvering and they'll execute the cross under, and when I see them back in, then I will resume a full level 3. So kind of, you can think about it almost as level 2 while the cross under is happening. But don't freeze the stick, continue doing what you're doing. It is not as hard as you think, and it really expedites things when we don't have to go wings level, do a cross under, and then restart all over again. Another thing we can do is use comms, or use go comms instead of reform. So a lot of times at the end of ET, I'll see students go number 2 rejoin fingertip right. Well, it's not right because you said rejoin. So rejoin versus reform are 2 different things. But if I just say go, all I need is an acknowledgement from 2, and they're going to do the thing. So 2, go fingertip right. I hear 2 over the radio. Cool. They've acknowledged that they've heard, and they're moving to fingertip right. Cool, some additional techniques. Turning rejoin as to when you see the signal to rejoin, immediately get out of one's plane of motion. So if I get the rejoin signal, usually from a breakout or a practice law swingman, I'm then gonna get out of their plane of motion. If I'm high, I go high. If I'm low, I'm go low for the most part. But usually I'm co-altitude with them if I did a good like level breakout or a good practice law swingman. So in that case, right, if it's a turn into, I do a high yo-yo. If it's a turn away from, I'll do a low yo-yo. Both of those we are getting out of one's plane of motion to affect the rejoin. And then closures, some just cross check I have for closures. So I want to be around 190 and slowing to 180. When I can read the numbers of the lead's tail. If I see I'm probably 210-ish around there, it's probably going to result in an overshoot. If I see I'm 200, right, I need to do something drastic. I need to do something, right? I got to pull to idle, maybe speed brake as I help dissipate that closure. Cool, some recovery techniques, form split. So have the DFL lead it to avoid confusion with ATC. I just always found this is a good technique, as they're not like, where's the other aircraft, because we carry our own squawks. If there's a great, and when I say lead it, I mean they will be the one to coordinate with ATC of who will go out first. If there is a greater than a 50-pound fuel imbalance between the aircraft, then send the aircraft with the lower fuel out first. Else, the wingman will go out first, is how I usually brief it. Cool. Also in recovery, anytime I'm like approaching Stennis, from the West MOAs, right? So usually pretty big Hayaka turn as we go over GTR, and then turn from over Stennis towards 7 Mile Farm. So I'll either put them into route right, or I'll go tell them to go fighting wing. After I'm on that leg from Stennis to 7 Mile Farms, I now want them on the outside of all turns I'll make for the remainder. So I hit radar initial, and I want them on the left in that case. If I hit marble, right, I want them on the right. I'll keep them en route until I've crossed radar initial and I've made that turn inbound, and then I'll wiggle them in the fingertip. I keep them at route to avoid birds to the max extent possible. As to, though, a good technique you can do is you want to push the 3-9 line, what is called smart route, because you are on the outside of their turn circle. So when I'm approaching the turn at radar initial is number 2. I'm pushing the 3-9 line as best of my ability. I'm also trying to maintain 2 ship widths, because I know the next thing they're going to do is rock me in the fingertip. In addition, I don't want to be 500 feet and overshoot into the center runway. Cool. Yep, make sure the wingman is on the outside of the turn at radar initial, because all turns in the pattern are echelon turns, right? We do not do welded wing fingertip turns in the pattern. In addition, do not overshoot. Overshooting is incredibly dangerous in form. Number 2 does not have the SA that lead has, and because they are mostly flying off of what lead does. If lead overshoots, that means 2 overshot even more, right? And we have 38s landing on the center runway. It's a very dangerous situation, so please avoid it. It is a safety of flight, and it will result in unsat. Cool. Another technique that a lot of IPs do is lead performs a no flap or brakes in the beginning of the brake zone to give 2 enough time so they don't have to go around, right? Because reduced same runway separation, hot side, cold side still applies in form, and we still need to abide by that. So in summary, we went over formation standards, profile, formation techniques. This was by no means exhaustive, but it kind of gives you an idea of some of the things you might want to start thinking about in chair flying when you do formation. Stay in the books. Please come with questions after you've listened to this PowerPoint, after you've read, and we can discuss that in the flight room. Thank you.